Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar will be part two of our series covering supply chain modeling and planning. We will identify different types of supply chain models and discuss how each can affect your company. If you did not attend part one, the webinar is available on Scarborough's YouTube channel. If you would like to receive a copy of the slide presentation, please let us know and we can forward you a copy of the slides. Before we get started, we would like to address a couple of items. The Q&A at the top of your screen can be used to ask questions. All questions will be answered toward the end of the presentation, depending on time. If we do not address your specific question, we will send a response to the email address provided in your registration, along with a copy of the slides. The recording of this webinar will also be available on Scarborough Group's YouTube channel. All the Scarborough webinars are part of a continuing education program designed to bring knowledge, equip you with key tools, and discuss the diverse range of topics indicative of today's global and domestic marketplace. I will be joined today by Geoff Chambers, Director of Supply Chain Services, which is part of the Scarborough Group's consulting division. So let's get into today's presentation. Geoff, let's talk about some of the benefits of supply chain modeling and planning.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Very grateful for your participation on a very important topic. And as Tony said, this is the second part of a series revolving around supply chain modeling and planning. And if you haven't had the opportunity, there were some words that we're going to use that are relevant to this part two, such as transformation. Transformation is really a word that was replaced by re-engineering in the 90s. And it's very, very critical to understanding what's going on as far as the marketplace, how it relates to this, the supply chain holistically is another word that we introduced, as well as the statistics that were put out by Oxford Economics that we use. So if you'd like to have that slide deck, please reach out to us and let us know. Let's go to the first topic, and I do want to say something about the supply chain. Supply chain modeling and planning is oftentimes misunderstood. Supply chain modeling should be a business initiative. It is not a supply chain objective or initiative. It's really a business initiative. One of the important parts of supply chain modeling is, number one, resiliency in your upstream and downstream supply chain, which is supply chain risk management. Now, when we think about the upstream dynamics in your business, it would be your customers. Your downstream would be your suppliers and vendors. So we plan at some point very soon to have a webinar specifically addressing risk management, because as we know, based on everything that's going on currently, not only geopolitically, but on a micro and macro level economically, we all need to have risk management in our business, irrespective of what industry we're in. The next one is agility and responsiveness. A couple of other words that really came out during the Black Swan event of COVID, as companies realized that they didn't have the agility they thought they had in their industry, in their business, and the responsiveness was slower than they like to see. The next one is operating efficiencies. We've all been talking about operating efficiencies. We do have a webinar on cost containment on the Scarborough YouTube channel, and it does address operating efficiencies in depth. The next one is business unit collaboration. Now, this is integrated business planning. Remember, supply chain is just one piece of the picture when you talk about business unit cross collaboration or integrated business planning. It's very important to understand that this is a business initiative that will have an impact on all of your operating units within your company. The next one is holistic data and information flow. Again, logistics is known for a lot of acronyms. We're introducing some new acronyms that you might not seen before, but you've heard about. We'll address those as we go through the different models. As we go on to the next slide. So from the Journal of Operations, there are basically 5 different what we call models. What I've done, and we as a company have done, is looked at the whole gambit within the Journal of Operations and come up with 5 that are probably the most important 5 in the whole Journal of Operations manual. So the first one we're going to talk about, and you can see that each one of these named, we'll get into each one of these respectively, so you can really understand what each of them mean, the impact that they have on your business, again, on your business initiatives, and how they affect your supply chain. So if we go into the next slide. So in 1996, there was a program called SCORE. SCORE is Supply Chain Operation Reference. Now, while SCORE at the time made sense, and essentially what it did is it took every function, every department within your company. So IT had a silo, finance had a silo, operations had a silo, supply chain had a silo. So the goal of the functional siloed plan in its infancy was okay at the time. But because we need fluidity in all the operating business units, you can see the examples here that we put up that talk about there's still a lot of manual processes. You're using functional tools. I'll give you an example of a functional tool and a manual process. So there are a lot of companies that keep their contracts and their pricing in Excel spreadsheets, just to give you an example. That's a very manual process, requires someone constantly updating, and normally it only provides limited visibility to the users it's intended for, not across the company. A functional tool would be something like, talking to customers and using customer service for an example. Oftentimes companies use an antiquated formula to figure out what the cost of goods are by zone in the United States. And those functional tools are constantly evolving, and it's very, very difficult to operate with functional tools, both from a customer service standpoint, operation standpoint, demand planning. It gets very convoluted. So there's so many limitations that functional siloed planning have to make you, to empower you to look at your whole operating system and your business as a whole. So there's a lot of reliance on Excel and other standalone programs. And again, visibility is a big word that everybody's talking about, which is very, very important when you're trying to collaborate business units inside a company.
Geoff, I did have a question on this topic. How do companies function that were using the siloed planning model during COVID?
Well, it's very good. Very good question, Tony. If we could, can we go back to slide number 3 for a minute? If we look at slide number 3, you know, there were two things that the companies were affected by: cash, number one, and liquidity. So cash meaning that when COVID hit and you were in a functional siloed plan, um, you know, you were spending, you know, 50 to sometimes 100% more on ocean transportation, not to mention domestic and North American transportation. So you did not have the number one thing that you need in a functional siloed plan, which is resiliency. In addition to that, just to elaborate a little further, when you don't have risk management within your supply chain, and I'm going to use an example. My brother-in-law is in electronics. They manufacture integrated circuitry from Germany. One of the biggest things that we had trouble getting in the United States is integrated circuitry during COVID. When you're in a functional siloed plan, you may only have one supplier. So he was getting calls from people all over the country trying to buy integrated circuitry to compensate for their suppliers' lack of abilities to get product to them. Again, going back to there were cash and liquidity being the actual product to be able to sell to their customers in the scheme of things on the upstream side of the supply chain. So cash and liquidity were hit hard by everyone, but those that had some sort of resiliency in their upstream and downstream supply chain were far better off. So it's very important to understand these 5 bullet points, because we know that business in general is not going to go back to the way it used to be. If we think about 2018, that should have brought up a red flag to us all, in that we started tariffs on steel and aluminum and hundreds of other items, which skyrocketed a lot of product for our country. Not to mention it costs about 300,000 jobs. So we don't know what's going to come next, but we can have a tier 1 supplier, a tier 2 supplier, and a tier 3 supplier to supply the goods. And that's the importance of having resiliency. Again, this SCRM is probably warrants a whole webinar, because we can take you through the steps to grade your suppliers and vendors, as well as to get out of a functional siloed plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. So let's go on to the next slide, which the first step is, this is limited manual collaboration. And what I might add to this dimension is, you can have a combination of the 4 out of 5 of these supply chain models. And what we're trying to do is empower you to see the importance of having a holistic and integrated business plan across all your business units. So limited manual collaboration is essentially, and what COVID did, Tony, to answer your question, is all of a sudden there's a focus on supply chain. There was starting in 2020, then in 2022, we started to see the downward cycle of not only ocean transportation, but also transportation in North America. So limited collaboration puts a keen focus on only the supply chain. And the next one is go ahead and click on the next one. Sales and marketing was involved. So in a limited manual collaboration, there can be a focus on supply chain, like there was during COVID. How can we keep our costs down? And two, sales and marketing is normally involved in limited manual collaboration to an extent. And then if we go to the next one, we're still relying on Excel and other standalone programs. So again, this is back to almost like a functional silo when you go into Excel and use Excel as a source, a single source for your business. And the last one is diminished visibility across all business units. So we knew in functional siloed planning, there was completely limited visibility, limited manual collaboration, and there's a keen focus on supply chain forecasting with some sales and marketing involvement, still reliant on Excel and other standalone programs, but you don't have the visibility that you need to see, forecast, and plan. So on to the next slide. And by the way, you know, if there are any questions, certainly you can start thinking about those, and we'll certainly answer those as we get to the end of the presentation. This is a lot of information. We do understand that. While it may seem complex, we're trying to lay it out as fundamentally easy to understand and quantify in your company. Demand planning is another popular source for supply chain modeling. Demand planning has its pros, definitely. Demand planning really started in the 90s as well, along with SCORE, which is Supply Chain Operations Reference, back to the silos. But demand planning did give C-suite personnel the software and operations software, but they also could do trend analysis with their customers. So you could say, you know, we're looking at customer ABC based on their purchase for this year. We anticipate, and we've spoken to them according to our sales and marketing department, and they expect to see an increase of this much. And you can take it back for several years if you have that much data. So the good thing about demand planning is you do have a software implementation. You do have the historic customer data to do trend analysis to try to forecast what is coming ahead. But there's still a lack of supply chain and logistics focus. So while you have the software, you have the historic data, demand planning does not cover supply chain and logistics as a focus. So once again, you have some visibility at this point, but at the same time, you have limited visibility. And again, you could have demand planning involved right now, and you could have a combination of these, but these are the highlights of the most common supply chain models. The next one is collaborative sales and operations. So this is another step in the right direction. You have demand planning. You have the ability to forecast based on the customer historic data trends. You have sales and operations now involved, which is a positive step forward, because again, we're talking about a holistic look. Under collaborative S&OP, you still have a limited supply chain and logistics focus. And while collaborative S&OP is a good tool. And again, it's another step toward integrated business planning. You still have elementary reports and analytics because you're not covering all the different silos within your organization. You have demand planning for operations. You have sales and operations involvement. You have some limited supply chain focus, and you have some really elementary reports and analytics. On to the next slide. So this is really our focus. And again, I want to underscore that supply chain modeling is somewhat of an elusive term in supply chain planning. So we're trying to change the mindset to see that really integrated business planning is a business initiative, that supply chain modeling and planning is a business initiative. It's not a supply chain initiative. So when integrated business planning is really changing the way you view through transformation, which we talked about in part one, the way you view your company, the way you, the obstacles that you come across when you actually try to create transformation in your organization. And in addition to that, the statistics involved when you do go ahead and move forward with an integrated business plan. So the holistic approach across business units with harmonic KPIs and supply chain modeling part one, we just uncovered a tree of KPIs. So that tree of KPIs is based on lean methodology. We look and talked about everything in a circular basis. So when you think about integrated business planning and you include all the business units like operations, IT, sales, marketing, customer service, logistics, transportation, international, global trade, when you include all of these business units, the goal is to create some directives and collaboration between all of those business units to create KPIs that are harmonic with company goals. And obviously the goal is to operate as one unit and move together as one unit. So in addition to that, you do have the demand planning software, integrated technology, and data analytics. And I know there's a big focus, and there has been a big focus on technology, and there are all kinds of companies now with digital technology, and there's a huge value in technology. But I do want to underscore that anytime you think about holistic business planning or integrated business planning, one and the same, you have to understand that when you're dealing in lean methodology, it's very people-centric. So unless you have the people and the leadership behind each business unit pushing for the KPIs in order to bring your company into an IBP, then technology is just technology. So I do want to underscore that lean methodology, especially in Kaizen, is always very, very people-centric to get complete buy-in. In addition to bringing in the fold an integrated business plan, it will allow you to have a fluid accrual and resiliency. Now, if you were operating in a functional siloed plan or a demand planning supply chain model, then essentially when you create a forecast for your accrual, let's say for 2024, it can become obsolete as soon as you create it based on all the changes in the industry. So it's very important to understand that you need that fluid accrual in order to carefully manage obviously your transportation spend, your production spend, and the like to be a successful enterprise. One of the great things about integrated business planning is with the integrated technology, with the leadership behind each business unit, operating within the KPIs established as a one single source company, moving together with all the business units, just as your body moves with all of its parts together as one. You have the full company reports and analytics under one silo. So we've gone from the step of a functional silo, we've gone to a demand plan, which demand planning is very important. We've gone to collaborative S&OP. We understand the importance there. But when you combine all of these different supply chain models and recognize that we're dealing with a business initiative, we're not dealing with a supply chain model, so to speak, then you'll have a greater understanding of how you can quantify and have your analytics under one silo. Now, while back to SCORE, a supply chain operation reference, where everything is siloed, there were also what are called PAMs. And PAMs are performance attribute metrics. It's very, very difficult to quantify attribute metrics, especially on a circular level. So that's the importance of KPIs, and KPIs being really the crux and structure of lean methodology. And we certainly have the experience to get you to that next level. We go to the next slide. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but I thought it was very appropriate in the understanding of, this is Newton's cradle. Everybody recognizes Newton's cradle. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the physics of the right and left side, and then we'll go right into the next slide, because it's very paramount to understand that both sides are equally important. So if we were to look at this, and when I look at my screen, I'm looking at the left side. So if I were to pull that left side as high as it would go and hit the balls, it's going to have a great ripple effect across all the balls in Newton's cradle. If I did it the same thing from the right side, it would have the same results. So whether you go on the right side or the left side, you're going to end up on the same results when you try to create something within a company that requires transformation. So in order to keep things on a steady basis, without a lot of disruption in your current business operation, if you pull both the left and the right together at the same distance, you're going to have minimal impact to the rest of the business units and/or the rest of the balls in Newton's cradle. So if we go to the next slide, I'll explain what I mean a little bit more. On the top right, if you think about your brain for a minute, your right lobe enables you to see. So you need a vision, obviously, in an integrated business plan, a holistic vision that everyone can see. And then the left side of your brain, in other words, if I were just sitting here and I was only using the right side of my brain, I could see everything. But unless I was using the left side, I couldn't have an action like moving my hands. So on the top right, you'll see bringing the right and left lobes together. It's amazing what we can do when we have a vision and we have the execution and implementation, and we're both swinging at the same time, which create combination strategies. And if we go back to the slide before, just real quick, actually one more slide before, we go back to the KPIs and the holistic approach across business units. This is where you're really going to see a huge impact when you can get everyone on the same page, bringing the vision together along with the execution or implementation of your integrated business plan. That's going to have a very minimal impact internally as far as a ripple effect, but the end result in your success as a business is going to be dynamic. I've seen this in one company. They started the process. We helped them with negotiations, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But if we go to the next slide, we're going to touch on some of these items. So again, bringing the right and left lobes together is just a way to give you a picture of I'm using my left and right brain to be able to see the vision and execute or implement the vision. You're enveloping holistic ideas, moving away, completely away from any type of functional siloed thinking, and then building your brand awareness and company buy-in for transformation. So that's the importance of having key leaders within each business unit and or department that share that buy-in, that share that vision, that share that implementation process along with those KPIs. And really, when you're building your brand awareness, you're doing it internally. And when you build that brand awareness and that you've transformed how you look at your business, and you're using one silo and reporting mechanism that envelops all the business units, then you're really giving your personnel internally a real buy-in, and that's going to reflect on the outset to your customers as well, because they're going to see that if you have an issue with a tier 1 supplier, let's say, you can always go to your tier 2 or tier 3 supplier because you're a resilient and agile company. Another thing that's very, very important is to know your customers and know your suppliers and vendors. Critical part of this picture. And the circular process improvements through lean methodology. Again, everything is circular. That's where we get our statement, history repeats itself, because the evolution of of lean methodology is always built on continual improvements. After you set your integrated business plan, you're continually evolving and creating operating efficiencies, and it's all done in a circular motion, which once you get going in a circular motion, then physics tells us that you're going to create forward momentum. And that's what we want to educate you to do, is to build an integrated business plan so you can have that forward momentum through that lean methodology and circular process.
I do have a question for you, Geoff. Have you seen any customers or worked with any customers that have made that commitment to move from a functional siloed approach into a holistic approach? And how did it affect their supply chain overall?
Yes. So one of the things that we have a customer that's up in Iowa. One of the goals that I had in the initial reason for hiring us was cost containment. So they wanted us to negotiate their parcel and express contracts and to look at their contracts in general. It's very difficult for us to get a good picture of the company without interviewing all the different departments that touch that piece of business or that mode of transportation. So consequently, my questions were like, how do you quantify, for example, customer service and how they sell to the end user? How do your salespeople, what is their involvement? Your operations side, are they connected to sales and marketing? So I approached them with this whole integrated business idea. And the vice president has been at our site, the operations manager, the controller. They've all been involved in this change of process, and it's created a very lean model for them with a lot of success. So I have seen it, the dynamics of how it changes things and the profitability, your return on investment, can be tremendous. And with business as normal is really not a word that we can use. We do know that in 2024 there are going to be more changes. So I believe education is one of our responsibilities as Scarborough, as the Scarborough Group, and all of our leadership team is, we have our own YouTube channel, obviously, so we're very interested in educating you to some of these new products. And again, while it may seem a little bit complex, when you really break it down in the slides, and we'll certainly forward these slides, when you really break it down in the slides and look at it as a business initiative instead of a supply chain modeling objective, then it changes the whole dynamic, because you're going to affect all of the company. And while supply chain is a focus, so are your customers, so are your suppliers, your vendors, your sales personnel, your accounting department. Everyone has an intricate role within the organization. So integrated business planning worked for this company. They're continuing to work on their actual floor, turning a lot of manual processes on pick and pack, and they're going into robotics. So they've taken this integrated business planning idea, and they've taken it all the way out to the floor when they pick the product and using robotics. So they set up their first robotics recently, which is, a huge win. And anytime we can participate in a win like this for this company, their return on investment has been fantastic. It gives the internal personnel a better outlook on the company because they're all siloed as one company, and it brings company buy-in. It's just a huge benefit. So I hope that answers your question, Tony, but it has been successful, and they're continuing to take that circle and now add robotics to their pick and pack. And it's changing how they look at things, as well as it's empowering them to look into 2024. They're now resilient. They have the agility and mobility to move, and they're resilient because they have different suppliers. They're sourcing, they're doing some nearshoring, which we've heard a lot of talk about nearshoring. Just a lot of the dynamics of how they looked at their business changed. So, we're thankful as a company that we could be a part of that. and watch that transition.
It's fantastic. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and we hope that everybody found this topic beneficial, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.